Good morning. Oh, I'm down here. I'll bring these down here as well. Lovely. At 12:51, February 22nd, 2011, this happened, basically. 1 minute beforehand, I'd been sitting on my bed. I was streaming a music video on YouTube, writing a status update on my iPad, sending a text on my phone, anything you could imagine I was doing. 1 minute later, however, I was sprinting down the street to check on my elderly neighbours. We just experienced a 6.3 magnitude earthquake, our second major quake in 6 months. Basically, this is what we experienced. It looks like a little bit like Blitzkrieg, and it felt a bit like that too. What we experienced straight afterwards, the power was out, telecommunications were down, liquefaction was gushing through my back garden, alarms were screeching, dogs were howling. As I got into my car to get to my parents' house on the other side of town, I looked towards Christchurch City Central and just saw a big cloud of dust, basically. And the thing that will stay with me is that I could hear my city groaning. It just felt like, you know the sound of Auckland, actually? That's what we were experiencing, that kind of groan that we don't normally kind of experience. So basically, that digital world that I just spoken of, it was switched off. Everything that I had ever known in terms of digital technology and my ways of expressing myself and communicating were gone. So basically, on my way to my parents' house, I realised two things pretty quickly. Number one, I needed to get in contact with my family, and number two, I needed information. But all of the ways I would do those two things were unavailable to me at the time. So when we got to my parents' house, we were back to basics. We had a landline phone and a radio, and those two were a little bit disabled as well, so it was kind of luck of the draw what would happen, really. So pretty soon, my hopes for communication and information were answered in the form of my auntie Fran, who was calling down from Auckland. She was, for the first hour or two, the only person who could get through, so for that time it became the Fran phone, which is a really crappy version of the bat phone. And so essentially, even though she was calling through, the phone basically forgot how to do its job. It stopped ringing, the red light would just flash. So every time the red light flashed, we would pick up. We soon realised, though, that the transmission only worked one way. It was luck of the draw if I could hear her talking or if she could hear me talking. So we devised that one beep of the keypad meant yes, and two beeps of the keypad meant no. Becca, do you have power? Two beeps, no. Becca, do you have anything? Do you have your phone? Two beeps, no. Do you have anything available? Two beeps, no, Fran, how many times do I have to tell you? What was really nice is that she would ring through, and in short bursts, almost like a tweet, she would let us know what was happening. She could obviously have access to the news. She was letting us know that there were buildings down, people had died, something that we assumed, but we were, just completely cut off. She was also communicating with Dad, who was in Asia on business at the time. He managed to get through eventually after about maybe an hour or two, and it was lovely to hear his voice, but something that was so bizarre, talking to him in Vietnam when I couldn't get in contact with my mum 4 kilometres away. But that's really just how it went. In terms of texting, we learned in September that there's this window of time that if you get your text out, it's pretty likely that your recipient will get it. The unfortunate thing about that, though, is that that window of time is about the same length of time that you spend freaking out. So you kind of really just have to be creative and know that it's going to get pretty crappy soon, but you just need to send your text out. The problem with that also is that, you would get bursts of 10 texts through maybe every half hour. Some people didn't even get their texts at all. I had a friend who got her text on Christmas Day, just been. Basically, instead of Merry Christmas, it was, "Hi Sam, I'm on my way home, don't flush the toilet." And it's like, I'm just not sure if that would have made sense on Christmas Day, but it sure makes sense to me thinking about it now. The radio that we also had didn't offer much in the way of information because people were ringing in to share their experiences. I found this really interesting because although we desperately wanted to know what was going on, it became this form of citizen journalism where they were telling us kind of what was happening. I've heard the cathedral's down, I've heard that people are in PG, and it's like, it was a really interesting thing that amongst these stories, there were also messages of hope. I know all this, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be okay. I've heard that people have died, but I know that we can rebuild from this, and that's something that's really stayed with me. Although it was a bit annoying at the time, obviously wanting some kind of civil defence information. It was just Sheila from Shirley ringing up about her cat going missing. So let's add a little context, I think. Let's see what happens with the screen. Not a whole lot, so that's okay. All right. Let's just improvise this. This is a tiny little bit of the Macintosh SE30. This was launched in 1989. In 1991, the World Wide Web was launched by CERN, and basically somewhere in between there, this is me. I was born in 1990, so you can see a tiny little bit. Oh, so cute. So I was born on the cusp of the digital revolution. I've been speaking to people recently who have, laughed at me a little bit when I say that I really am part of the generation that are analog and digital, but primarily digital. The thing that we experienced the most in the February 22nd earthquake is that our primary ways of expressing ourselves were suddenly gone. So the way we tried to get around that, basically, is to go offline. And I know that's the most ridiculous thing to say at a Digital Earth Summit, but I think my point here today is that no matter what, people will find ways to communicate. And it's online, offline. I think the thing that I could ask of you today, and something that I may have a role in the future if I'm lucky, is creating some kind of sustainable, resilient infrastructure that will just make sure that we never have to feel like we did on that day. I'm going to give up on this now, but basically, as the dust cleared in Christchurch, it became pretty clear that we needed to find ways to help people share their hopes and share their experiences, just as they did on the radio that day and just as I was doing with the Fran phone. It became pretty clear to the organisers of the TEDxEQChChC conference too. Their first one was in May last year, so they got it together in 3 months, which was really, really cool. I volunteered on the day, and it was something that was just mind-blowingly inspirational. After 3 months of barely keeping our heads above water, really just running on adrenaline, we got to be involved in this exchange of ideas, this experience that was just so uplifting. We listened to people like Art Agnos, who was the mayor of San Francisco during their 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. He spoke about how they recovered in the years and decades after their experience, and it was a really wonderful thing to listen to him, and he made us stand to take a pledge for the rebuild of Christchurch, which was really cool. That is why, at the beginning of this year, I leapt at the chance to apply to become the TEDxEQChChC intern. This was through the University of Canterbury Arts Internship Program, so it's been going for 8 months now. We had our event yesterday, which was really, really cool. That's why I'm a little bit hoarse, because I've been doing a lot of talking. It was just as inspirational. It was one of those experiences that really brought people together, but it offered a forum really for that expression of ideas. And what was nice to see between the difference between the two conferences was the first one was relatively devoid of a reliance on any kind of digital technology. Oh, okay. You may or may not be familiar with the placard movement that happened online. This is something that once I became the intern for TEDx, it really inspired me. It's something that these people over in America, they felt voiceless, they felt powerless. It was one of those things that for very different reasons, they had their voice taken away from them, and they wanted to allude to that fact by obviously not speaking their story, but writing their story. So this is something that over the last 8 months, I've worked on a video project to allow some people in Christchurch to ensure that they can communicate not just what they felt on that day, but primarily their hopes for the future. I think that's what's really important now, almost 2 years to the day of the September earthquake. It's something that we can look forward to. That's what I enjoyed about TEDx, is that it was also an opportunity for us to realise that the earthquakes in Christchurch aren't just a tragedy, they're an incredible opportunity. And with the blueprint that's just come out, it's a really exciting kind of possibility to see that we could reinvent an entire city. And I'm so excited that there are people here today and over the next few days who can exchange ideas and will hopefully in some way contribute to that as well. So my message today is we will always find a way. Excuse me, we will always find a way to communicate, we will always find a way to contact our families, we will always find a way to make sure that, we can be with people. This is a quote that I love. It's from Harvey Milk, who was the first openly gay politician in America. Basically, you have to give them hope. Hope for a better world, hope for a better tomorrow, hope that it will all be all right. Really resonates with me, and perhaps it's something you can think about. I'll show you my video now. Forgot sound. Christchurch is that we become the city that people look to for resilient, anything-proof infrastructure so that we never feel voiceless again. And thank you for listening to my voice today.